Welcome to the Partnerships with Purpose podcast, where we explore ways to engage communities in research and other academic projects. My name is Jamie Masterson. In our very first episode on the origins of Texas target communities, I talked to Dr. Shannon Van Zandt, former Associate Executive Dean of the School of Architecture. She reflects on the history of the program to serve the citizens of Texas and the value it brings to students. Let's hear what she had to say.
When I was in the Master of Urban Planning program as a student, just like it is today, we had an applied planning studio sequence that was engaged with real communities. And at that time, Texas Target Cities was part of the Center for Housing and Urban Development, but it was really kind of led by David Pugh, who was the Master of Urban Planning coordinator at that time. And I think Pugh is what we called him. So I'll call him Dr. Pugh. Actually, he wasn't a doctor. He was a JD. But Pugh was very committed to serving the state of Texas. He had done so as a lawyer for many years, a land use lawyer, before he came back to academia. And I think he saw the Texas Target Cities program as an opportunity for the planners to serve the state of Texas as part of our land grant mission. I mean, I think for me, as I've grown into these various roles that I've played, have recognized, the importance of the land grant mission, and that A&M is the land grant university for the state of Texas. It's a very large state. It's a state that has pretty much every type of development challenge you could imagine. Certainly distance is always a factor, but really wanting to serve the people of Texas and give back to them in a way that, certainly our agricultural extension program and our engineering extension program have been able to do, but that we haven't had something like a planning extension service that serve the needs of small communities that have very little capacity. And so as a student, it was just a learning opportunity. It was at that time, we didn't call it a high impact service learning opportunity, but that's what it was. And so every year, each class of the planning program, took on one of these small plans. My city was Silsbee, which is outside of Beaumont, and I still remember doing that. That was in 1997. I probably still have a copy of the plan around. I think you do.
We have the plan,
and I edited that whole thing, and I pretty much wrote the whole thing too. There's always that one student who kind of takes responsibility for pulling everything together, and I, of course, was that student. And so
I could see that.
Yeah. You can see my mark all over it, really. I still format things very similar to what I did on that plan. And so, that was a big product for us. And it was a major achievement for the students to be able to have a deliverable that they had generated that went into use, that was adopted by the city and became their guiding document for a period of years. I don't know how many. Yeah. And we had that relationship with a lot of small towns in the area. I remember, a number of different cities, Navasota, I think Cuero, are cities that we've served multiple times since then, that have come back to us for plans. And so when I became coordinator for the Master of Urban Planning, that was much later, obviously. So I left A&M in 1997, and then I returned in 2005 as a new assistant professor. So it was still several more years before I became coordinator. But during that time, the program had kind of lulled. It had not had strong leadership that was really committed to that idea of serving local communities. And so it was in need of revitalization, and I thought it was still really valuable, and I didn't want to see it just fall away. Yeah. Because it's a cornerstone of the curriculum for the Master of Urban Planning program, and it's kind of I think of it as a competitive advantage that something that we have over other planning programs. A lot of planning programs do this kind of work where they work with local communities, and we're in a more rural area that a lot of planning programs are in cities. And so they have a lot of other options. They have a lot of neighborhoods that they can plan with, or they have they can work with the city on small pieces, but there aren't that many out there that are serving more rural communities, and especially low-capacity rural communities like we have in Texas. And so while we're not alone in doing this kind of project, I think we do it best. And we actually just went through our reaccreditation for the Master of Urban Planning program, and they kind of confirmed for me that we do it best. So they were very complimentary of Texas Target Communities, and they agreed that it was special. That there are programs out there that do this kind of thing, but that we do it better. And I think part of doing it better is having a dedicated staff for it, like you, and that is so that it isn't completely dependent on the faculty member, because it is a lot to ask of a faculty member to establish and maintain those relationships with small communities. It's not necessarily part of their normal assignment of teaching, research, and service. And so I thought it was important as MUP coordinator to have someone like you that could serve that role so that we could maintain those relationships. And that's something I learned from John Cooper. I know John we brought in to kind of revitalize the program.
And that was in 2012.
And that was in 2012, yes. And I had known John for many years, and I have learned from him, how to do community engagement. And I knew that he knew how to do it better than anybody else. And he was ready to come home, as he will say. And in fact, John Cooper, who kind of revitalized it, was an old classmate of mine at A&M. And then we also did our PhDs together at the University of North Carolina. And he stayed there. He was there before I got there, and he was there long after I left because he was working in between while he did his PhD. And the place that he was working when I left was a place that did this kind of thing, that was a capacity building agency that worked across the South. And MDC, yes. And I think it's Manpower Development Company is what it stands for, but nobody calls it that anymore. But it's kind of an economic development, community development consulting firm that works in low capacity areas to build capacity for jobs and for industry to come in and all of that sort of thing. And so one day he called me and he said, Shannon, I'm ready to come home. and I said, well, I'm not in a hiring position at this point, but we want you. I mean, I think you'd be a great addition to the faculty and to the program. And so we started working on it, and I kind of reached out to more senior people, including Walt Peacock, whose funding that he had available was really important in revitalizing the TTC. And so between him and Forster Inabisi, who was department head at that time, we created a package to bring John back. And it was tricky, and I learned a lot through that process that I think helped prepare me to be department head, because understanding where the money comes from and what the money can be used for and all of that is tricky. It's not easy to create a new position at a university, but that's what we did.
So that's a little bit about our history. And in the next episode, she'll continue on about the process Texas Target Community uses to engage communities, students, and faculty. If you would like to learn more about the program, follow us on Instagram at TAMUTXTC. You can check out our website, collaborations.tamu.edu/TXTC, or you can email us at texastargetcommunities@tamu.edu. You can also consider donating to our program through the Good Neighbor Fund, which supports small, low-capacity communities in Texas. See you next time.